In 2001, Father Rufus Halley, an Irish Columban missionary, was shot and killed in the Philippines during a botched kidnap attempt. Rufus had been working in a predominantly Muslim area, fraught with historical tension between Christians and Muslims. He had dedicated his life to Muslim-Christian dialogue, and his death was a shock to the local people, Muslim and Christian alike. I was to travel out to the Philippines to see how the Columbans were carrying on with the work of Muslim-Christian dialogue. Prior to departing, I travelled to the Columban House, Dalgan Park in County Meath, to meet with Father Mick Sinnott, a retired Columban missionary who himself had been kidnapped in 2009 and was the last Columban to work in the area close to where Rufus was killed.
I'm Father Mick Sinnott from presently more or less based here in St. Columban's in Navan, having retired last October.
I asked Father Mick to tell me about the lead up to his kidnapping.
The lead up, I had developed the habit of taking exercise after supper, and there was a short distance in from the street into our house, and I'd walk up and down there for half an hour. And I was doing it every night, so I must have been under observation. So on the night I was kidnapped, it was about, I suppose, nearly around 7 o'clock at night. It gets dark there at 6 all year round. I was just walking up and down, and two young girls who were they were college students who lived with us, and we give them allowance and pay their tuition and let them go to college, and they helped out then running the house in the evening. They went down to shut the gate coming in from the street, and just as they were shutting the gate, these men approached her apparently, said, "We want to see a priest." And I had my back to him at that stage, and I just heard the first thing I heard was feet coming up right alongside of me, and two people got me by each arm, and there was one at my back and there was another in front with a pistol pointing straight at me, and they just dragged me down the driveway and threw me into the back of a small pickup and took off for the seashore, for the seashore. And when we got there, they pulled me out of the thing and pulled me into a small boat. Now that was rough enough, that whole episode. I knew they put a blindfold, threw something over my head as a blindfold when we got into the boat. We got into a small boat first, and but I could see the lights out through the blind, and I knew the direction we're going, and I had a fair idea where we were for the first 10 days. Yeah. Well, the first 10 days were in a very swampy area. We got out, and there seemed to be people waiting for us there, and we hiked for about 2 hours or so. I got completely exhausted after 2 hours. There was water, the muck was up over your shoes, and the water was up higher, and it was a very difficult hiking, and I wasn't feeling too well at the time.
Do you mind if I ask what age you were at the time?
What age? I was 79. Yeah, 79.
Well, at the time when you were kidnapped?
Yes, yeah. Almost 80 actually. We had 80 in December. I was gone in October, kidnapped in October. But they helped me to walk, and after about 2 hours we stopped for a rest, and I says, "I can't go any further. You can kill me if you like, but I can't go any further." And they went off after a while and cut down the bough of a tree and tied a hammock under it and carried me for the rest of the way.
Father Mick was held for several weeks before his release was negotiated.
I was released on a Wednesday. The Wednesday before that, my captors told me we were going, and we packed up and started out on the wood. Always travelling in the dark, because out just before it got dark, and we hiked down about 2 hours, and then got into the boat, and took us 8 hours then to get to Zamboanga del Sur, to get to Zamboanga City. The outskirts of a Muslim village on the outskirts of Zamboanga City. And there was the MILF waiting on the seashore for me there when I got aboard. And they took me about 100 yards out through a gate where some representatives of the government were there, and they took me into the headquarters of the military in Zamboanga City. The school that I that I was associated with for the children with disabilities. They organised a few rallies, and the Muslims participated and spoke at those rallies looking for my release. And the Muslims would have been embarrassed, those especially embarrassed, and and the Christians were embarrassed that the foreigner was had been kidnapped and they didn't know what was happening to him.
The next day, I set off for the Philippines.
May alam akong apat na dahilan ng pag-aasawa at mga kasal. Mayroon diyang kasal na kasunduan lang na hindi naman sadyang nagligawan.
I arrived in the capital city, Manila, on a sweltering hot day. I made my way to the Malate area of Manila to meet with Pat O'Donovan, the head of the Columbans in the Philippines.
We're standing right now in Malate Church, which was the original parish that the Columbans came to in 1929, and we're still here. It's a place steeped in history, where 5 Columbans lost their lives during the at the end of the Second World War, the Battle of Manila, and many hundreds and thousands of parishioners also died at that time. But it is a place of tremendous historic interest and tremendous historical interest for the church here in the Philippines. When I came here in '74, there were 160 Columbans in Mindanao alone. And now, at this time, almost 40 years since I came here, we have many dioceses where there were none before, many of them with up to 40, 60, 80 diocesan priests. So over those years, our mission has tended to take on different focuses. And since the 1980s, we have put a lot of energy into the Muslim-Christian dialogue there. Historically, it's quite complex, but there was a Muslim population in the island of Mindanao for many centuries, but they in turn had displaced the indigenous people in many places. But then in the earlier part of the 20th century, and certainly after the war, Second World War, a lot of what we call lowlanders or Filipinos from the northern, from the Visayas and from Luzon, began to settle in Mindanao and to take over some of the land there. And they became the majority in many places. Over the years then, the tensions, the political tensions arose as to who would, if you like, politically rule parts of the areas. And so since around about the late 60s, early 70s, there has been on and off conflict, political conflict, going on between the national government and the various groups that are standing for the independence of the Muslim people there. And in the midst of all of this, the church has continued to have very good relationships in many places with the imams and other people within the Muslim community, which have endured. The places where this can be truly engaged within Mindanao happen to be places that in some senses are very dangerous politically, but we don't see it in that regard. We don't see the dangers as such. That's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is this is the place where we can engage with people who want to engage with us. And so we see the people, not the danger. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the dangers always is that, it was a danger since the late 70s of kidnapping. People have been in dangerous situations. There have been attempted kidnappings. Rufus Halley, who was shot in 2001, was shot because they tried to kidnap him and he tried to escape. Des Hartford, God rest him, also, who was many years in the Christian-Muslim dialogue in Marawi and was the apostolic administrator for there for 10 years. Des had 2 near kidnappings, and then he was ultimately kidnapped, and he was gone for 10 days. which was a very difficult experience for him. But when Nick Sinner was kidnapped in 2009, it was something totally new for us, because Pagadian city at that time was not regarded as a dangerous place. The area around was not too safe. But the fact that he was kidnapped in his house in Pagadian sent shivers through everybody, because this was new. So as it turned out, we chose to leave Pagadian a year and a half after the kidnapping. But these are kind of dangers that are there, but we don't necessarily see them. We're aware of them. We're not foolish. But they're not in our minds all the time. Not saying, oh, I'm afraid to do this, I'm afraid. We don't think of that. But you say, I would like to do this, and then you might say, oh, now, maybe it wouldn't be wise to go there during the evening time or something like that. You know? But that's who we are. I think none of us worry too much about these things, which probably causes our families to worry all the more, because they think we are foolish or something, you know.
The next day, I left Pat and Manila to head to Mindanao. I flew to Cagayan de Oro to meet with Father Paul Glynn, a Columban priest who works on Muslim-Christian dialogue in this city.
Brian, welcome. Welcome to Cagayan de Oro, what they call the City of Golden Friendship. Welcome to Mindanao. Slightly different climate to what you left in Ireland. I think it's about 35 degrees at the moment, which is normal for this time of year. So enjoy the sunshine. When I came out as a student in 1990, I lived for 2 years around the Manila area, and then I came down to visit the work that the Columbans were doing here in Mindanao. And I was very impressed by the work being done by the Columbans in the area of Muslim-Christian relations. Mindanao has been fraught with conflict and misunderstanding between Christians and Muslims for so long, and these were guys who were Catholic priests living in Muslim communities, not there to convert at all. If anything, there to learn the culture and the customs and the language of the Muslim Maranao people, to be a reconciling presence, to be a bridge between Christians and Muslims. Islam also comes from the word salam, which means peace. So Islam is also a religion of peace. So it was really that work for peace and reconciliation that brought me back, that when I came back to the Philippines in 1994, I volunteered to work in Marawi Prelature with Rufus Halley and Des Hartford and Terry Toohig and Kevin McHugh, Pat O'Donovan, the Columbans who were working there already, involved in this peace building work. And that's where I spent the next, I think, 10 years. And I would still be there had it not been for Rufus Halley's tragic death. I continued to live there after Rufus's death, but then there were lots of rumours going around that perhaps I too might be kidnapped. So the decision was made by the priests and the bishop that it was too dangerous, it was too risky for us foreigners, for us Europeans to continue in Marawi. There is a need for this work also in Cagayan de Oro, so that's why I've been appointed by the Archdiocese to be the person responsible for Christian-Muslim relations in Cagayan de Oro and in this whole province.
Paul was going to take me to Iligan city, a place where he runs an interfaith group with local Muslim and Christian leaders. First though, he took me down to the local mosque in Cagayan de Oro.
Good morning. I am Ustad Makakuna Im Sumpingan, a retired chaplain of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. You know, sometimes the jihad is misunderstanding. As I said, that any good rapport is a jihad. For instance, if you are a politician you have your own, a little bit of money. If you try to give it to the person that need your help, that is jihad. That is another side, meaning of the jihad.
I also heard some ustads and some ulama, some Islamic theologians saying that also jihad is sort of like warfare with with the evil in yourself, the dark side of yourself, the shadow of yourself, the things that are not good in yourself. Like, for example, you fast to overcome your sort of your very base desires and things that lead you into sin. So it's sort of fighting against the sinfulness in yourself, and that is the greater jihad.
Yeah, that is the
jihad al-akbar, is it? Yeah.
Because
and
anything that is, if you can, shun your desire, which is not improper, that is jihad.
In Christianity, we call it. In the old days, a lot of the old sort of mystics and that called it warfare with the sinfulness in yourself, or Christian warfare is what we call it, which is struggling to overcome your own sinfulness. For example, like in Islam, the fasting during Ramadan is for that purpose, so that you will have control over your body rather than allowing your body to control you. And it's the same with fasting in Christianity, Lent, all that sort of thing. If you are addicted to chocolate, you give up chocolate for Lent, things like that, so rather than your stomach controlling you, you control your stomach. Rather than your desires controlling you, you control your desires, and you become a more wholesome person.
There is no distinction between the Christians and the Muslim in the sight of God. The best of us in the sight of God is the most righteous among us, whether you are Muslim or Christian. Muslims and Christians are brother. Why? Because historically, even the Old Testament and the Quran, Ismail and Ishaq is brothers. I think this is in the Bible also. Ismail
and Isaac
is a brother. So, in other words, Muslims and Christians are brothers, because is Isaac.
I think also, Ustads, because today there is much more contact between Christians and Muslims. Say here in Cagayan de Oro, in all the universities, so many of the students are Muslims, so the Christians and Muslims are together in the classrooms, they're studying together. And then, as you said, in the madrasas, in the Islamic schools, that the Muslims are taught to respect and love their Christian neighbors. So I always believe that when we, like the religious leaders, when we are working together, and the people see that the ulama and the bishops and the asatids and the priests and everybody are working together and are friends, well, then that promotes better relations sort of all round, because they see that the religious leaders are cooperating. It gives them an extra impetus that they try to do the same also. So hopefully, because of people mixing together more and because of better education, all these things, that a lot of the prejudices of the past hopefully will go away eventually.
We left Cagayan de Oro and set off for a journey to head deeper into Mindanao, to get close to the area where Father Rufus was working, and to meet with people who Paul is involved with Muslim-Christian dialogue in predominantly Muslim areas. Before our journey commenced, we stopped off at the cemetery where Father Rufus Halley and other Columbans are buried.
These, Peter, these are all Columban graves.
Gabriel Piohan, James Flynn, James Moynihan, Frank McGuinness, John Meany, Frank Chapman, and then Rufus.
You were saying you remember it was a huge funeral, yeah?
It was a huge funeral, yeah. It was a really, really big funeral. He was waked in the local church here in Bulwa, and again it was chock-a-block with people, and a huge number of Maranaos, huge number, I think 46 vehicles of people from Malabang, Christians and Muslims, came here, and they sort of spent the night in the church with him, and then the next day he was buried here.
It must have been a one-off.
It was, yeah. I suppose it was highly unusual, really, for so many Christians and Muslims together, you know, and having Muslims among the chief mourners here at the grave, because I mean they wouldn't be used to this sort of funeral. They have a different system of burying their own dead, so it was interesting. In loving memory of Father Rufus Halley, Society of St. Columban, born January 25, 1945 in Ballybricken, Waterford, Ireland, ordained April 6, 1969, died August 28, 2001, Christos Simos non nostre, let us be Christ's, not our own, the motto of